My wife cheating on me after marriage and having a child out of wedlock. I hated my father. When I was little, I had a favorite stuffed doll. It was affectionately called my Bieber. I carried my Bieber with me everywhere. I loved that doll so much that I couldn't part with it no matter who tried to take it away from me. My cousins always tormented and teased me by playing keep away. But I knew the secret to getting the Bieber back. All I had to do was cry, and the boys would quickly stop playing their games. One night I left the Bieber in the yard. Shortly after dinner, I remembered that I had left my favorite doll. We lived in the countryside at the time. When I say it was dark outside, I mean pitch blackness. It was the kind of darkness where you walk down a dark alley, and who knows what evil villains lurk in the dark. These evil villains could range from scary monsters to zombies to ferocious animals with huge pointy teeth. And to make matters worse, dark storm clouds were coming. My Bieber was about to be washed away by the rain. But fear not. I knew what to do. All I had to do was cry, and I'm sure my dad will come out, defy the darkness and all the monsters that lurk in the shadows, defeat the coming storm and bring back my dolly. After all, no one likes it when a girl cries. All the boys melt and do what I want when I cry. Not my father. No, he had the nerve to tell me to go on my own. Despite all my tears, sobs, and pouty lips, my father refused. How could he do that to me? Didn't he love me? And to think he had the nerve to ask me, if you love her so much, why did you leave her in the yard? Before I could answer that question, he said, if you really love your Bieber, you'll face your worst nightmares to save her. Well, I'll show him. I stomped straight to my room, slammed the door, and cried all night. My mom tried to comfort me. I could even hear them yelling downstairs. Mommy knew the rule about what boys should do when girls cry. With each lightning strike and thunderous roar, my heart broke. My dad doesn't love me enough to go after my Bieber. Didn't he know he had to do it? I loved my Bieber. It wasn't my fault I forgot about it in the yard. Needless to say, when morning came, I didn't have my doll. Okay, I'll just go and give my dad a silent punishment myself. I've seen my mom do it many times. I even heard her talking on the phone with other boys, making fun of my dad, even though I didn't understand everything she was saying. She could even make him sleep on the couch when she was really mad at him. I couldn't wait to learn how to do that. I was sure my mom would teach me these abilities when I got older. When I went outside and looked for it, I just couldn't find it. The storm must have washed it away. I cried again. But now. My father answered my tears. He came up to me and asked me what was wrong. I refused to answer him. I just crossed my arms over my chest and gave him an angry, pouty expression. Frowning my eyebrows and pursing my lips, I just stared at him. I've seen my mom look like that when she's angry. Maybe this would work for me. Not a chance in hell. Dad just laughed and told me to go get the mail. I stood my ground. I wasn't going to let him make fun of me like my cousins did. I was going to be just like my mom. She just had more practice at it. Though I'll admit, when my father raised his voice and demanded I go get the mail, I lost my resolve. The last thing I wanted was to be flogged. Not that my father had ever raised his hand at me, but the tone of his voice was intimidating enough. So I walked down the gravel path to the mailbox. On the way, I kicked a rock or two, pouted my lips, and muttered curses about how I wished my dad would leave forever, or that he needed to stay in the dark with all those monsters. We'll see how he likes it. It was my favorite stuffed toy, and he didn't care. As I walked over to the mailbox, the tears flowed even harder than before. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of joy. In the mailbox, protected from the torrential rain of the night before, lay my precious Bieber. It had not been destroyed. It had not been lost. She was safe and sound and back in my arms. I would never let that happen again. I promised Bieber over and over again that I truly loved her and would never forget her again. I hated my father. While I learned that the crying game wouldn't work on my dad, my mom refused to give up. The screaming didn't stop. Doors slammed, dishes shattered, and the phone calls when my dad wasn't home increased. I never really heard what my mom was saying because she was always whispering on the phone. But I could hear her giggling. Plus, she always hung up the phone when my dad came into the house. One night, there was no screaming or yelling. There was no crying or tears. Mom just went into her room, packed a couple suitcases, and left the house. Waiting for Mom in the driveway was some strange man in a red pickup truck. She threw the suitcases into the back of the truck, climbed into the cab, and never looked back. I couldn't believe it. Mom left? Who's gonna teach me the rules of the crying game? Who would show me the powers she used on my dad to make him sleep on the couch? She had to teach me everything. Of course, my father spent hours telling me that her leaving wasn't my fault, that it was a problem between him and Mom. He said they both loved me, but they needed some time to work out their differences. I was so mad at him for making my mom leave. I even spat back at him. If you really loved her, you would have faced your worst nightmares and gone after her. Let me tell you something about my father. He was a big man, at least in the eyes of a child. He was strong. When a child first sees this giant break down and cry, it changes everything. My mom showed me that he had a tender side. He was weak. I think that was the word she used on the phone to one of her buddies. Unfortunately, I was still just developing the abilities my mom had. Even though my parents divorced, I still had to stay with my dad. I begged and pleaded to live with my mom. After all, my father was a weakling. Besides, I needed to find out what other powers girls had over boys. My father insisted I stay with him out of spite. He made sure I never saw my mom in court, or during divorce proceedings, or even when I talked to the judge. He made sure she was never there. In fact, he only went so far as to make me spend one Christmas. All of my other friends who went through divorce said they loved Christmas. Instead of having one family Christmas, they have two. Some of them told stories about how one parent always felt guilty and smothered them with gifts, while the other gave a few gifts, but they were very expensive. Why did I never get that? Why didn't I have that power? Look, it was all my father's doing. If I had lived with my mom, I would have known how to spend two Christmases. I hated my dad. When I got older and went to middle school, I hated doing homework. I hated going to class, especially biology. Do you know how disgusting it is to dissect a worm? It was even worse when we had to cut up a pig. The stench was kind of ferocious. It was like going to the boys' locker room after soccer practice. Who cares about anatomy? Who cares about recessive genes and chromosomes? It's not like you hear people talk about it in real life. Fortunately, I've discovered that there are others who hate their parents as much as I hated my father. I would have every chance to spend time away from home and away from my father. Even though I knew my friends hated their parents, I envied them. I would live in those huge houses. They had the latest gadgets, computers, and everything. My dad never had anything like that. That was another reason to hate my dad. He didn't buy me all the cool stuff. That was another one of my losses. No. Going on dates was the worst. I went on a date with a really cute guy. He did things that made my heart beat faster, whether it was speeding through town at almost 100 miles an hour or breaking into places we weren't supposed to be. The danger and excitement made my heart race. I was sandwiched between fear and that adrenaline rush, like being on a roller coaster. So when the boy kissed me, it felt like my whole world spun. My head was floating in seventh heaven. This boy was taking me to heights I never thought possible. Unfortunately, my father had a way to bring me back down to earth quickly. When the boy dropped me off at the house, my father was already waiting for us. He had a pair of shotguns that he had so conveniently cleaned when we pulled into the driveway. He made me go up to my room so he could chat with my boyfriend. Needless to say, I never went out with that boy again. From that very night on, boys refused to date me out of fear of my father. I knew crying on the stairs wouldn't help me. If I was out all night, he would just come looking for me. This was even more embarrassing than the incident with the gun cleaning. I couldn't believe my father was doing this to me. He was ruining my life. Just because my mom left him for some hot guy doesn't mean he can take it out on me. But there comes a point in a kid's life when he starts to look at his parents differently. While under house arrest for another violation of my father's rules, I decided to clean out one of the closets. After all, it was a place I could put my clothes and shoes. While I may not have had a lot of the latest toys, gadgets, and electronic devices like all my friends, I had all the clothes I wanted. Walmart may not have been as fancy as Aeropostale or Abercrombie and Fitch, but buying 3 t-shirts for the price of one made sense to me. I worked hard for the money, and I wasn't about to throw it away on a blouse that would be out of style by next year. Okay, maybe my dad's teaching wasn't so bad. This closet was in desperate need of a purge. Time must have forgotten about this place because there were cobwebs everywhere. Okay, maybe not everywhere, but there was definitely a lot of it. The kind that you can't see, that gets in your hair and sticks to you no matter how many times you try to get it off. Some of the clothes hanging in that closet were definitely from the time warp. I couldn't believe that people could actually wear some of these things on purpose. Putting old clothes in trash bags so they could be given to Goodwill, I found my parents' wedding album and some other mementos. Looking through the album, despite the outdated fashions and long-forgotten hairstyles, my mom looked gorgeous in her white wedding dress. Her eyes were filled with love for my father. In addition, my father, who never wore a tie or jacket, looked spectacular in his rented tuxedo. Picture after picture brought back memories of when my parents were together, when they were in love. But just like the faded photos and dust-covered scrapbook, it was so long ago, and yet seeing my father in a much happier state of mind was different. There was no sparkle in his eyes, no spring in his gait in the last few years since Mom had left. The only time I saw a glimmer of that reaction was when I received some sort of award from school, no matter how silly it was. Regardless of the function or reason, my dad was there to cheer me up. In my opinion, he was doing it to embarrass me to no end. But after looking at those pictures, my mind began to wonder if I was seeing everything clearly enough, especially since I had never seen my mom at any of these events. Putting aside the photo album, I came across a collection of letters. Judging by the size of the container, it contained a ton of love letters. It's amazing how sentimental they can be. It's not like nowadays when people post their Facebook status or tweet about their feelings for someone or even send a face. No, those emails were long and stretched out. They even had these funny things on them called stamps and postal dates. I guess that's what my teachers were talking about when they talked about the Pony Express. It may have only been a month, but I can't believe how much I love you. I can see the sun shining in your hair and your smile warms my heart. Your beautiful brown eyes bewitched me. With one word, I would reach all the way to the heavens and pluck a shining star just for you. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you. I would go to all ends of the earth to bring back your golden fleece. Your beauty is incomparable, and the fact that you even cherish the thought of loving me back is very much like Aphrodite and Hephaestus. You're my Venus. You're my Juliet. I see myself living my whole life by your side. This is just an excerpt from one of my father's love letters. They were long and vivid. My father was such a romantic back then. What happened to that magic? What happened to that spark? Obviously, my mom loved those letters because she saved so many of them. However, after quickly looking at the envelopes in the other bundle and the handwriting written on them, I noticed something had changed, not only in the handwriting, but also in the tone of the letter. I can't wait to see your body again. I want to make love to you. I love you. Those letters in the back of the container were very different. They were short. They focused on physical sex rather than emotional love. They used vulgar language rather than poetic expressions of love. Yet the author used the word, I love you. Why were they at my mom's house? It certainly wasn't written by my father. To make matters worse, these letters were dated sometime after my parents' wedding. What's going on? The bundle of first letters were romantic and sweet and could melt a girl's heart. They focused on love and living together. The second bundle of letters were rude and unpleasant and focused on the physical and vulgar. The grammatical and spelling errors were enough to make me vomit. My stomach twisted, however, when I came across the latest find in this walk-in closet. It was from a lab in California. The contents of that letter changed my life forever. It changed everything but one thing. I hated my father. How could he keep this secret from me? Although if I really thought about it, it shouldn't have come as a surprise. My father wore his hair high and tight. It was dark brown. My mom always loved the way her long brown hair fell down over her shoulders in dark curls. Even in wedding photos, their brown eyes glowed with love and happiness. Maybe my blonde hair and blue eyes were just recessive genes. That's what they taught in biology. How could my father be so mean and hide the truth from me? The official letter said I wasn't my father's daughter. How could he do this to me? Why did he hide my real father from me? He must have made my mom not tell me anything. I never knew he wasn't my real father. After everything he did for me, I can't believe he could lie. He made me call him Daddy. I needed answers, and I certainly couldn't trust a man who had kept it from me my whole life. No, I needed to find my mom and make her tell me what was going on. Maybe then she could explain how she could have married an evil monster like my father. Tracking her down took more effort than I thought. I called my grandparents, but they hadn't seen her since she left my father. All the aunts and uncles didn't seem too interested in her whereabouts. I was about ready to give up when, while reading the newspaper, I came across a police report. There had been a domestic disturbance at one of the trailer parks, and it listed the name of my mom and some other guy. I'm finally going to get some answers. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe I was hoping that the heavens would open up and everything bad in my life would be destroyed, that my mom's house would become utopia and I could escape the evil that lurks in my own home. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Instead, the front yard of this trailer park was littered with dirt and trash. Had the owner been running a junkyard or just holding a rummage sale for the past 2 years? The grass was either dead or overgrown. My father would have had a stroke if he had seen what that yard looked like. With the amount of time he spent tending to his lawn, this place was an absolute disaster and the complete opposite of home. Mom must have noticed me pull up because she was the first to say hello to me. She didn't recognize me at first. I didn't recognize her myself. Her dyed blonde hair looked fake, and you could easily see the dark roots. While tattoos were probably a good idea back when she had them, not so now. Since she'd left my father, she'd let herself relax. When she finally realized I was her daughter, she hugged me and I could smell the nicotine on her clothes. However, the tearful reunion didn't last long. I immediately asked her who my father was. At first, she tried to lie, saying that my father was my real father. However, I showed a letter from a lab in California. She frowned and finally said that my real father was a mistake, that she loved my father, and my biological father was just a guy she met at the diner where she worked. They had some sort of affair that lasted about a year, but he skipped town one night and was never seen again. About the same time, this balding, pot-bellied beast came out of his trailer. My biological father may have been a mistake, but in that moment I realized that the summer clothes I had chosen that day were a huge mistake. That ugly asshole looked at me like I was a piece of meat. Is this the guy my mom left my dad for? I threw up, and then I left. And just like my mom, I never looked back. I hated my dad. I finally met a boy who survived the shotgun cleaning conversation and took everything my dad could throw at him to make sure he respected me and loved me for who I was as a person, not for my looks. I finally met a guy who could make my heart beat faster, not because I was living in the moment, but because of the time we spend together. All the other boys my father protected me from had girlfriends who got pregnant before they even graduated high school. Some of them tried to be good fathers, but most ran away from their responsibilities. This boy is different. He even earned my father's approval by proposing to me. But who will walk me down the aisle? Who will give me away at my own wedding? Who will be the last person to hold my hand before I become Mrs. Banks Williams? I can't ask that of my biological father because I don't even know who he is. I'm certainly not going to ask my mom's boyfriend, or whoever he is, to do it, because the mere thought of being that close to him makes me nauseous. No, my dad should hand me over to my fiancé. My father raised me as his own daughter. He loved me like I was his own flesh and blood. He made me feel loved and gave me everything he could give a child. He forgave my cheating mom because he loved her and truly believed she was sorry when she was nothing but a cheater. He taught me the difference between love and infatuation. He taught me that love should be unconditional, but that it should also be mutual. He taught me that you should want to do your best for the person you love, but as long as there is the same love in return. My father also taught me the difference between life and existence. Life in the present only lasts a few seconds. It is forgotten before you realize it. Life, especially with a loved one, lasts a lifetime. My father was a wimp and a cuckold, according to some people in the community, but he was more of a man than any of my mom's lovers. Tell me of a man who has the strength to accept that his daughter is not his flesh and blood, but to raise her and love her as his only angel? Well, that man is my father. I hate my father. I hate my father because he died before I could tell him that I love him with all my heart, and I will always be grateful for what he taught me. And I want to hyphenate my name so that everyone knows that I am first and foremost my father's daughter. Daddy, I love you so much. There wasn't a dry eye in sight when Melissa Banks stepped off the runway and collapsed in tears, sobbing at the headboard of her father's casket. Her fiancé, Aaron Williams, rushed to her side to comfort her in her time of loss. It was at that moment that he fully understood his bride and no longer complained about her desire to hyphenate her name in memory of her father. Even the old gossip girls who gossiped about Liz Banks's many affairs with men and Steve Banks' failure to do anything about it looked away with shame. The only word that was spoken was a quiet amen from the pastor. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.